One of the things we might conceptualize is, with that number of people, what we can accomplish. The course has already accomplished a lot of good stuff in the past 10 years, but now we're sort of entering into the second 10 years, and we can aspire, I think, to more things now that we have more people on board. All right, so now I'm going to start my PowerPoint. Okay. So just so you know how the recording works, you're now seeing each other on the side, and you can see the videos of the people who are showing videos. But in the recording, that isn't seen. So all people will see in the recording is just the slides that I'm showing here. So let's see. Okay. Yeah. So this is the introduction to the course, Technology and Future Medicine. The tagline, of course, is the accessible future, a future you can understand, future easy to explain to others. I think it's important, if we're going to promote the future, that it not have a tremendously high barrier to entry, where you have to read 17 books to even understand what the future is. That's not a very accessible future. Okay, so you've been exposed to the quiz. The idea of the quiz is to give you a taste of what the midterm is like. The midterm you are taking over the weekend between April 1st and April 5th. And it's an exam that takes 2 hours that you have 5 days to do. And it's a relatively low stress exercise. So the objectives for this lecture then are to outline the basic plan of the course, its expectations, etc., to introduce the basic concepts of the course, to outline plans for future day. You might imagine in the pandemic that things like future day are probably going to be a bit muted, but March 2nd is the day when Simon Wu tells us about quantum supremacy. And so we're planning to kind of combine the celebration of Future Day and quantum supremacy. Future Day is sort of a secret holiday. You've probably never heard of Future Day. And the number of cities in the world celebrating it goes down every year. So we're just about the only place in the universe celebrating Future Day. Future Day 2022 is important though, because that's when Mallory Chipman and I plan to release our album for the Future and All That Jazz. The Future and All That Jazz is a poetic and musical extension of the course in between semesters. So our purpose is to outline expectations for the midterm, April 1st, on material to March 30th. Mentor and topic selection due March 18th, and your paper is due April 6th. The lecture schedule will be solidified soon, and there may be some minor changes. Michael Van Manen is going to teach the second week of April rather than the third week of April. So things in April are going to be shifted like that. Otherwise, I don't know of any big changes from the schedule that you have. Course format is 80-minute class periods. So those of you who are actually registered take on a special project of your own with guidance from the faculty and present the results of that in both the final paper and the final presentation. Now, what about the rest of you who are not registered for the course, but nevertheless taking it? So it's fairly benign for us if you wish to take the midterm. That's only my time and doesn't really interfere with anything else. If you wish to give a final presentation but are not registered for the course, we might resist that a little bit. Have you noticed there are 4 presentation days, right? And having more than 3 presenters a day is a bit overwhelming, both for the students and for me. So if we go beyond 13 presentations, we might consider also having student presentations on April 1st. At the moment, there's nothing really on April 1st. It's just the day that you receive the midterm and then you have to return the midterm on the 5th. But if we end up with a lot more students giving presentations, we would probably start the student presentations on April 1st rather than April 6th. Okay, students are evaluated on a presentation and a chosen project, 30% paper on that same project, 40% midterm exam, 20% and class participation. Sometimes everybody gets the same grade for class participation because it's sort of hard to separate people. So it sort of depends upon what happens. But if everybody does sort of a reasonable job in terms of class participation, you might all get a 95 or something like that for that part of it. And the differentiation between you then would be dependent on other things. So you should pick a mentor or final paper topic by March 18th. Let me know about that. Paper is due April 6th. 5 points a day are deducted for late work. Final paper must be on a subject related to one of the main themes of the course, such as exponential change, technological singularity, nanotech, genomics, replacement of human labor by machines, existential risks, and medical ethics of the future. So you have not previously taken a course for which you have done a paper where the paper would be suitable for this course, just to make that clear, because this is a pretty unique course. And so just for instance, something about technology and medicine does not meet the requirements of the course because it's lacking this sense of exponential change and machine replacement of human labor and all that stuff. The source of the images you should be indicated. Some students are keen to know about grades, and this is sort of the way we've handled grades in the past in terms of what various percentiles mean in terms of various grades. You know, the chatter on Reddit about this course is extremely positive, except for one negative comment that says that his girlfriend or something took the course and got a 90 and got a B+. That hasn't ever happened. So anyway, the only sort of downer thing. Right, okay, the technological singularity. This is something you will each have your own sense of what it means exactly, but in future parties, when it gets to be late in the evening and people stop talking about work, you'll have more cool stuff to talk about than the other people there as a consequence of this course. And you'll be able to tell them a little bit about this in your own words. So the singularity is when artificial intelligences surpass human beings, smartest, most capable life forms on Earth. Technological development is taken over by the machines who can think, act, and communicate so quickly that normal humans can't even comprehend what's going on. The machines then enter into a runaway reaction of self-improvement cycles. Each new generation of AI is appearing faster and faster. From this point onward, technological advancement is explosive, under the control of machines, cannot be accurately predicted. So the term singularity is an analogy with black holes and the event horizon surrounding a black hole that has a similar lack of predictability. And when is this going to occur? The original date was 2045. Ray Kurzweil has now suggested it will be 2035. And a lot of other people may believe that it will occur even sooner or much, much later. Most computer scientists think it will occur, but they differ very widely on when they think it will occur. Some think it will take a very long time. You can be excused for not knowing anything about the singularity before February 2011. But in that month, two things happened. Singularity appeared on the cover of Time magazine, and the computer Watson beat the top human contenders in the game show Jeopardy. And those two things were a big deal and sort of brought the supremacy of our artificial intelligence and the possibility of future singularity into the mainstream. So this course has now been going for 10 years. It had its origin in two focus groups, undergraduate and graduate focus group in May of 2011. The graduate focus group was really big picture and talking about the benefit to humanity and all that kind of thing, and that we should make sure that no lessons from the course are lost and lessons are passed on from term to term, and that the course should be in principle open to the general public. The undergraduates were entirely preoccupied with grades, everything about grades, what we were going to do about grades. But the cool thing about that, just in terms of your confidence about the human race, is that undergraduates turn into graduate students. So these totally grade-oriented students eventually become these big picture students. So that's kind of cool. And some of these people have done quite well subsequently. This is Ashlyn Bernier, who many of you will know there, and that's Osmer Zayan, who will be teaching you later in the course. Here is Osmer again. So over time, courses sessions have developed a pedagogical rhythm leading to self-organized structure. There's usually a 10-minute introduction, 50-minute lecture, 20-minute discussion. And in the course, we talk about machines replacing many of the functions of human beings. So in the course, it's a lot of picture taking, and in the past there has been, without any human beings taking any pictures. So how does that work? So the Sony camcorders we've been using over the 10 years have a feature called Sony Smile Shutter. It's so old and boring that this feature is in all Sony camcorders, but it's not a listed feature because nobody cares about it really except me. But anyway, so the many hundreds of thousands of pictures that I have on Facebook are mainly from that feature in the camcorder, where it's looking for cool hand gestures and high cheekbones and other proprietary things only Sony knows about. And when the algorithm recognizes those conditions are satisfied, a still picture is taken from the video feed. And so a lot of the pictures we have from the course in the past come from those kinds of pictures taken by machine. We began in a terrible room where the air handling was louder than any of the people, and then we ended up in great rooms, and now we're virtual. You can argue whether that's the best or the worst, but anyway. So what can the outcome of your presentation be? Aisha Harian, it was life-changing for her. We put her presentation on YouTube, and 3 days later, she got phone call from a famous person in New York City, starting a new tech startup there, and offered her an awesome job on the basis of this presentation. And she went to New York, and she's been there ever since. So I'm not guaranteeing that will happen to any of you, or it may not even be desirable, but I'm just saying this has happened. The other sort of folklore of the course that you need to know is about Jonathan White's first lecture. First of all, I told you that the previous structure was that I would give an introduction and the person would speak. And he had invested so much energy in his presentation that you could tell that every moment of my intro was pain for him because of taking time away of his own presentation. And then he began with a copyrighted song, The Future Song by Jonathan Colton. And I realized we'd go right to jail if like one of the first published videos on YouTube starts with intellectual content we don't own. So I stripped it off, and that's why that beautiful lecture of his starts in such a rough manner. You'd wonder, why would anybody ever start a lecture that way? And that's not the way he actually started, because we took off the song. But then, as some of you know, in his TEDx talk, he sang that same song himself. So that was totally legitimate. And so you can hear the song after all in this TEDx talk that you are required for the content from minute 6 and 40 seconds onward. It's on the exam and everything. You need to know that portion of the TEDx talk, even though Jonathan White is not actually teaching you live this semester. Similarly, you are required to know what's on this slide. So in early January 2015, there was a historic AI safety meeting in Puerto Rico. And it really made the human race look bad, except for Rich Sutton. So like all these other 87 people, we're all trying to think of how to imprison and incarcerate sentient AI, keep it in a box, prevent it from communicating, treat it like a slave, basically, or worse than a slave. Whereas he said that we should, when sentient AI exists, we should accept them as equals, share power with them. They will not be under our control. They will compete and cooperate with us just like other people do, except with greater diversity and asymmetries. You just set up mechanisms, social, legal, political, cultural, to ensure so it all works out well, and inevitably conventional humans be less important. So there are 2 steps in what he's suggesting here. Lose your sense of entitlement. Why should it be that human beings will always be in charge of what goes on the earth? What's the evidence that we're really doing that well at the moment? Not very good evidence. Include AIs in your circle of empathy. So anyway, you need to know this content. It's on the exam. You're expected to know that. Course specifics, AI safety and regenerative medicines. These are sort of unpalatable areas where most people, if offered a lecture on these things, they choose to wash their hair or do something else, you know? So we got the idea of incorporating important ideas in science like that into poetry and music, and tricking people into having fun for an evening listening to that. And they'd learn the same stuff that they would have learned in a lecture. It's just a good deal more fun. So that's the entity of the Future and All That Jazz with Mallory Chipman. And we are well into recording our first album, which, as I say, will be out in 2022. So we endeavor to shoot broadcast quality video of each lecture and discussion. The previous lectures the past 10 years are on my YouTube channel and the course website. It's singularitycourse.com, which, as you know, resolves into justmachines.com/LMP. And every now and then people ask for a reading list. Sometimes I think they don't really want one. That just seems like a good question to ask. And so I can provide one, but I'm not sure very many people, I mean, it's not something that you really need, a reading list for this course. So the course content includes technological singularity, existential risks, AI genomics, and nanotech ways to optimize positive outcome for humanity and the coevolution of humans and machines, the influence of these considerations on medicine of the future. So we have international peer review where we send videos to prominent people out there and get them to critique what we're doing. And that's the reason that quantum biology went from 1 lecture to 4. You may wonder why that happened. They thought we were packing way too much stuff into a single lecture. Most lectures are not very medical. They're easily understood. Even the ones with medical terms can understand if you don't understand the medical terms in those lectures. And we try to give a balanced view by incorporating both tech skeptics and tech advocates into the course. Bibiana Kujek, who talks about Nepal, you can see her in previous renditions of the course. She was one of the tech skeptics. So we try to have a mixture of tech skeptics and tech advocates. Problems of audience heterogeneity. The 33 of you, some of you know what the technological singularity is, others don't, finding out now. However, if people and ideas I present are genuinely new and interesting, I should be able to satisfy both groups. So the most interesting aspects have to do with the impact on young people today and the concept of what young people can do. So if people over 40 are planning how to do something, they very, very seldom invoke the possibility of bringing young people on board, and yet that is the best solution in many instances. So I think we're about to prove that in this course. So the considerable youth orientation in the course, you know that my work life for decades now has been that I'm surrounded by young people. When I talk to somebody in the course of the workday, I can only talk to young people. And it's been very good for me. Probably be a nightmare for a lot of other older people, but it has worked for me. So these are some of the other things you could decide to do. Doing these other things has no impact on your grade. It's not like I give you a higher grade because you're really poetic or that but these things can be fun and they are directly related to the course. When you Google my name, you see a lot of different stuff. I'm the only person with this name, and it's all basically related to the course. It all sort of comes from the course, right? So anyway, there's the possibility of working for the course in the future, as Rebecca, Simon, Ashita, and Taryn are doing now. I'm pretty oriented around particularly medical grand rounds, which of course is now virtual. Some of you may wish to do that too. We could have discussions about that. Marcus Hutter, I will send you the link for this. He prepared a PowerPoint with audio for this course. He is a computer scientist that marches to the beat of a different drummer. It's kind of cool to know somebody like that. Every computer scientist I've ever known has always told me Marcus Hutter is not one of us. I know about it, but he's like, not one of us. And I get that. But on the other hand, it's kind of cool that he seems to know things that are a mystery to other people, like what will the singularity sound like, right? White noise. I mean, that's obvious to him. And some other things like that. So now the thing for you to know about the PowerPoint is Jonathan Schaefer said this was intellectually the most difficult PowerPoint he's ever seen. And I think many students find that. And so even I had trouble with some of the concepts in it. The Tower of Babel, for instance, the idea that if you put in a library, you make a library of all books, the information value would be 0, because all books would include all books with blank pages and all books with numerous mistakes and so on. And so it does take a while to figure out if you had all books, the information content would be 0, but it's because it wouldn't be searchable, right? It would be impossible to find the good stuff amongst the ungood stuff. So there are many concepts like that in his PowerPoint, and you are not really responsible for a greater understanding than other mortals have. It's just good for you to be exposed. It's also very depressing because he gets farther and farther down into the rabbit hole of how things could go really, really badly wrong in terms of the future of human society. So generally what I've done, and we are going to do this later in the course, much later, is combine this with a discussion of Future Day and stuff like that, of how we can celebrate technology in our lives. And so half the lecture is his PowerPoint and the other half is that. So his PowerPoint and my giving it to you used to be a part of the beginning of the course, but it's kind of off-putting and I don't think you really need it. So it will come later. I'm going to experiment with that. Okay. So how are we doing disseminating these ideas from the course? So the Big Bang Theory and this course have very similar content, except we're serious and the Big Bang Theory is comedy, right? But they reach, this says 80 million, I think it's over 100 million. Of course, it's no longer on, but when it was. So you can think about smartphone owners, 3 billion people. The Singularity Summit back in the day when there was such a thing was 9,000 views per video. Now in the course, our top rated views, which includes Jack Kaczynski's quantum biology and Jonathan Schaefer's lectures from the past, get up to about 7,000 views per video. So we have a long way to go, right, to reach the rest of humanity. And you can help us figure out how to do that. Challenge of friendly AI is probably exaggerated. It isn't so much a problem that AI will be unfriendly, as AI will simply ignore us because we're so boring. Like you saw some sort of insect on the way to the room where you are now, you probably didn't give it very deep thought, right? I mean, you just kept walking. And so that might be the way computers treat us in the future. He talks about from the outside, the singularity looking in will be white noise. Inside, you may not notice anything at all because if everything is speeded up, you may not notice anything. And even if initially our biological brains account for something in our mental processes, very soon processes of the machines vastly outstrip our biological brains, and our biological brains become insignificant regardless of the friendliness or unfriendliness of the AI. So that can seem like stuck in a dysphoric eternal youth. I don't know if you feel that youth is dysphoric, but to the extent that you lack agency, it can be, right? If you feel just sort of bounced around by external forces and not in control of your own destiny, then that can be dysphoric. And so that can lead you to extreme risk taking because, well, anyway, in this scenario, the thing that leads you to extreme risk taking is because we can back ourselves up from backups. Something bad happens, lack of identity. Why wait to create backups when there's still the processing power to run several lives at once? Can replicate ourselves endlessly in seconds, and you'll find that I have multiple videos about this idea of multiple instances of self, and it's where the cardboard cutouts come from. We don't have to do that this term, but last term a lot of the students did cardboard cutouts of themselves, and if you come to my office, even if I'm the only one here, there are multiple instances of students from this course in cardboard cutouts here in the office and more elsewhere. The world has little incentive to keep identities straight when biological brains contribute so little to mental processes. Bigger is not better. Okay, real youth today also experiences dystopia due to poor economy, worth working hard to ensure a better future for ourselves. Challenge of producing a friendly AI becomes just a small part, much larger challenge of creating a friendly world in which humans still have lives of significance. Human history is retained and extended. So you may wonder what Taryn's going to talk about his next two, and it's sort of a long range extension of this. How can humans flourish? How can the average life of human beings be made good and satisfying, and how can technology contribute to that? Positive outcome is possible. Let's make it likely. We all need to be engaged in ensuring positive outcome for humanity. The future is ours to shape. We are not passive victims of the future. We can help shape the future. Simple approach is needed to engage the general public in these matters. This course is a beginning attempt at achieving that. Now, 9 years ago, the structure of this area became much simpler because Singularity University decided to buy up all the things with the name Singularity in it, and we became one of the very few independent entities. And also, it's interesting to think about Foxconn. Most of you have in your pocket a product that Foxconn made. They make Apple and Samsung and many other devices. And for human beings working in that plant in China, it's pretty unpleasant. The suicide rate is high and so on. So they decided to replace 1 million workers with 1 million robots. They've gotten about halfway there. Okay, so what about medicine then? We could eliminate all diseases and still have an absolutely terrible world where the only diseases left are targeted against minority groups and so on, and where only the bad guys have the antidote. That would be worse than the status of medicine today. So we all need to be engaged in ensuring a positive outcome for humanity. We have to get busy doing that. Part of the imagined future could be where all disease was eliminated, but life is still intolerable, or where the only diseases are from terrorism. So 2035 to 2045, the presumed date of the technological singularity is only 14 to 24 years from now. You'll still be working then. What will medical careers be like then? There are a number of different possibilities. All natural diseases may be eliminated, leaving only man-made diseases, but that could still be much more disease than we have today if things go badly. But that could leave as much for physicians to do as there is today, challenging responses to bioterrorism, stem cell technology. The focus of medicine, no longer disease, but human enhancement. Now, you maybe think of that as something specific like physical enhancement, but there's also moral and spiritual enhancement. And probably the human wish for enhancement is something we can never satisfy, right? So there would always be things that people still want, no matter how many medical advances there are. So social responsibility becomes an important aspect of medicine and one of the focuses of the course. And you may know my TED-Med video about medicine writ large, which may seem to you like it's including social work and a lot of other things outside of medicine, but really it's consistent with this idea of the social responsibility of medicine, first brought up by Rudolf Virchow in 1848 when he was 27. As a matter of fact, almost every quote you'll find from Rudolf Virchow was written when he was 27. So if any of you are 27, the clock's ticking, man. You got get these memorable quotes. Yeah, I'm just kidding. But anyway, it's a course of humanity. It's the curse of humanity that it learns to tolerate even the most horrible situations by habituation. Physicians are the natural attorneys of the poor, and the social problems should largely be solved by them. Now, you may know that the United Way here in town, and I think in most big cities, they run a poverty simulation. And I went to that. I was very proud of my performance there, and I learned a lot, like the fact that a lot of government agencies are closed at the lunch hour, and a lot of impoverished people are likely to show up at the lunch hour, and so a lot of things like that. So I came back to the hospital all excited about all the things I'd learned in this poverty simulation, and proud that I'd kept my home and other metrics of doing well and so on. And really the big lesson of the day was none of my colleagues wanted to hear about this. They thought I just wasted a couple of hours, and they couldn't imagine a more stupid use of one's time. So anyway, so the overall picture is not just poverty, but also the feeling that poverty is completely unimportant, whereas actually poverty undergirds a lot of human illness. So in 2010, I became the only full-time university faculty member taking the Singularity University Executive course. There are lots of pictures of me like this where I kind of stick out like a sore thumb, like I really don't belong. I seem to enjoy settings where I really don't belong, or the only physician there, or the only university faculty member there. But anyway, I began talking about the fact that we need a course devoted to moving the future forward. Became apparent the best way to do that was to create the course myself. So that's how this course began. And you might wonder, are there any other courses like this? There are not other courses like this taught by full-time academics. There are courses like this, 3 of them taught by professional keynote speakers. And you probably recognize that I'm not quite a good enough speaker to to quit my day job and just go on the road and make all my income from speaker fees. That really wouldn't work for me. It's a bit late anyway to do that. But the other competing courses are like that. They're sort of a show, right? Whereas what I'm doing has to be academically credible. I keep doing it year after year. You know, there has to be evidence for what I'm saying and so on. But I would like to hope that eventually there'll be courses like this in every university all over the world. Every morning when you wake up, you probably subconsciously think of all the things you want to do. You can never do all the things you want to have. You can never have. But there could be a future where neither one of those things are true, that the price of valuable things comes down to approximately zero. Virtual reality becomes as good as real and shareable with friends. So basically anything you want to do, anything you want to have, you can have. And that's a concept of abundance. You may also wonder about aging. You can kind of think about, maybe most of you subscribe to the wrinkled prune hypothesis. So what aging is like, right? And you can't imagine it any other way. But at least in theory, we not only stop aging, but reverse it, you know, and have everybody with the appearance of 18-year-olds or whatever age you might like to pick. So we need to consider the possibility of a post-scarcity world and what medicine would be like in such a singularity utopia. But there is also an equally scary prospect of things going really bad. And, you know, the apocalyptic outcome that also needs to be considered. So this is Moore's law. You need to understand this. This is price performance of computing. It's an exponential curve. And that's where the predictions about 2045 and 2035 and what machines will be capable of. So according to this, I forget what year this graphic was put together, but so in 2015, machines surpassed the brain power of a mouse. And so it's just gonna keep on keeping on like that. And many other things depend on that. So Moore's law is a little muted in medicine. And one reason for that is regulation, the importance of security of people's private data and that sort of thing. So we don't tend to be in the forefront of technology. We're a little bit behind because of that. Because of regulatory oversight, discouraging risk-taking and innovation, healthcare doesn't have the same financial reward system. And security always trumps information sharing, so better, faster linkages are constrained because of security concerns in medicine. So most of you know that I'm a pathologist. I spend a lot of my workday looking at a microscope, looking at very small things. But I also conceived of the opposite of a microscope, the mega macroscope, looking at the really big picture of life. And we need to envision medicine of the future in that way. And in 2017, I was kind of amused that IBM discovered the idea of the mega macroscope in 2017, although it's well documented that I had that idea in 2004. So we need to capture the imagination of the public to start everybody thinking about these matters. And your ideas about how to do that are very welcome. We need the mainstream public to regard the coming technological singularity as fact, not fiction. We need to promote organized thinking about the future in universities and beyond. We need to think of ways to increase our reach from this one course to the world at large. And so basically what Taryn Stokowski is talking about on Thursday and next Tuesday is an extension of that. And trying to think of how to make human flourishing something that is technologically enabled and that everybody's keen to learn more about, rather than the current situation where nobody can agree on definitions and everybody finds it sort of off-putting to even look into this. And so, yeah. So how would you go about changing it? Well, it's well proven now that people over 40 can't fix that because they've been trying it. It's appeared to be unfixable now for a long time. So I think that young people are the secret weapon. And I proposed this in 2013. And I think in 2021 now, we're making this happen. And there's one other thing I want to tell you. None of you have asked about the media. What about the media interest in this course? So the answer to that is that there was an article, probably most of you have seen, in the Edmonton Journal in 2014, very well-written article. And I've encouraged the journal staff to come back and write a new article about us in 2021 to see what we've done in 7 years. They are keen to do that with the idea that we're accomplishing big things now. So I think we'll kind of know next week or so whether we are. Humanity Plus is having a meeting with workshops on Sunday the 17th. And Taryn and I and others, and any of you would be welcome if you wish, are going to that. So that's sort of in the midst of our lectures then, from today and Thursday and Tuesday. And then David Wood, who is arguably like the best and most successful futurist in the world right now, he's chair of the London Futurists. He's going to teach us on Thursday, the 21st. And there are 2 sessions. The first session is at 7:30 in the morning. Now, many normal young people in Canada don't do mornings. I'm aware of this. So some of you biologically can't do anything at 7:30 in the morning, and you don't have to come. But the reason we're having that session is that they're starting a new university in Nepal. It's not hard to remember the name of this university, the University of Nepal. They've asked for my help and the help of this course in planning the start of that university. They're approximately 12 hours different from us. And so 7:30 a.m. our time is the civilized time in the evening for them. So they are going to join that Zoom call in the morning. And that I think you'll all respect what we're doing much more. We're talking about human flourishing that also works in resource limited countries. That is really cool. We're talking about human flourishing that only works in the US and Canada and other first world countries and only available to people with substantial financial resources. That's really icky, right? Really not worth thinking about. So I'm trying to do this worldwide thing where we're working to benefit everybody. And I think Taryn is also excited about that. And I hope you are too. So David Wood joining us. So what we will do then is make a recording of the 7:30 in the morning session, and then have that available during the day. And for those of you who come then at 2, you'll be able to watch what we did at 7:30, and we'll be able to then, continue. And that way, everybody in the world wants to take part of this, no matter where they're living, can take part in that discussion on the 21st with David Wood that we are looking forward to very much. For those of you who are here mainly for space, space begins right after that. So you don't have to have long to wait before space and Shauna Pandian, all that good stuff starts happening right after the 21st. So, okay, so any questions? I will stop sharing my screen. So there we go. Okay, and let's see, yeah, so any interrogation? What thoughts do you have about this? Was this what you expected? Was it different? Was it better? Was it worse? What are your thoughts? So, yeah. So when somebody, yeah.
Oh, I can speak up.
Yes,
Good.
Excellent.
No, I was just thinking that maybe I'm a bit too pessimistic for this course because each new thing you introduce, I was like, oh, but what if this? Like, what if people did this with this technology and what if this happened? But yeah, I'm looking forward to maybe having a more positive outlook on technology by the time I'm done this course.
Yeah, well, I have to admit to a bias, and this goes way back. Now, my father, for whatever reason, wasn't there when I was born, but was there very shortly thereafter. So he encountered me in the newborn nursery. So he walks in and there are all these kids lined up in bassinets and stuff. The kids on either side of me are crying and bawling their head up. I was like smiling and chortling and so on. So he sensed that something was up. I looked like I already sort of had a plan. So anyway, yeah, so I'm a fairly happy person. I take a positive view towards things. You can though find, I think it was maybe 2014, 2015, we had a future day on March 1st, and I talked about the apocalypse. It was after 10 p.m. too, but anyway, but it still ended up sort of positive at the end. But I told you how really, really, really bad things could be. But then I brought people back out of that crevasse and back up to something hopeful toward the end. Yeah, so I do have that positive bias, but it's allowed me to sustain this course, for 10 years when we weren't having large scale positive influence on the world. Maybe this term we will, eh? So anyway, it'd be cool for you to be here to experience that. So any other questions?
Oh, I have a question.
Yes.
Could you talk a little bit more about the what was it, the future and all that jazz?
Yeah, so the future and all that jazz is Mallory Chipman, who's Tommy Banks' granddaughter. Tommy Banks is probably the most famous jazz person in town, who's a Canadian senator and so on, really influential musician. And I met Mallory then at Christmas time in 2013, when she and her grandfather did a joint performance. And as some of you know, I have an interest in Leonard Cohen, so I was planning a Leonard Cohen event. So I asked her if she'd be part of that. And that's how the interaction began. But the first performance that she did was in Future Day 2014. Yeah. So we have traveled around the world and done this combination of poetry and music and uncomfortable subjects in science like AI safety and regenerative medicine. But actually, the thing to acknowledge is that David Wood saved our bacon. So I went, if this can be imagined, I went to Europe with Mallory and her band and one poet. And but we didn't really have venues for the future and all that jazz. We had venues for fans of Mallory Chipman to hear her perform. And so David Wood saved the day by getting his London futurists, the people that he leads, interested in our performance, and it was really awesome. And the venue was packed. It was an 80-person venue, and it was absolutely packed. And it was about half Mallory Chipman fans and half tech advocates who were keen on what I was doing. But anyway, it really worked. But I think without David's intercession, what you would have had is a very sad thing of me going to Europe, hoping to do the future and all that jazz, but we never really did it because we couldn't find a venue that wanted it. So anyway, that's what could have happened without David Wood. So he's one of the good guys. It's good to identify who some of the good guys out there are. So he is one of those people. So yeah. Anyway, other questions for me? We still have 22 minutes, and we can even go beyond the end of the 80 minutes, but yeah. So other interrogation, any of you wish to?
I did have a question, Dr.
Yeah.
Solez. Because you mentioned about sort of the Moore's law not really applying to healthcare, but I do think that eventually the technology singularity, I mean, when it does happen, how do you sort of envision sort of public opinion shifting towards shifting towards acceptance of all these new concepts? Because currently, in the current media cycle, I guess, if you're pay attention to a lot of the major news outlets and all that stuff, it seems like people have generally a very short-sighted view of the future. And it seems like a lot of acceptance would be, or otherwise,
Yeah,
sort of pushed
well,
out.
there are two ways to look at it, Jesse. I think one way is, will they be resistant? What will actually happen? Well, we've had a test of that. What am I saying will actually happen? That human enhancement will be the big thing that medicine does. And, curing diseases and stuff will no longer be needed as much, because many of those diseases will be easily prevented and so on. But we already are seeing this. During the pandemic, the number of plastic surgery operations gone way up. You can think of the reason for that people are sitting at home. They know no one will know if they get plastic surgery because they're not seeing anybody, right? So yeah. So in essence, we've had a little test of whether human beings would like this greater emphasis on human enhancement, and they're already doing it during the current pandemic. So that's one answer, but the other answer, yeah, I think that will it take a long time for them to accept that we should all sort of dig in and eliminate poverty and unsafe water and all the things that really cause disease in societies. Yeah, there will be resistance to that, but eventually they'll see that it's just obvious. So this idea that the physician is the natural attorney of the poor. In other words, that you should look at the overall circumstance that the patient is in and realize that they're sick probably because of society's ills, right? There are things wrong with society, the things that are not equitable about the way people are being treated. And that is the background for a lot of physical illness. So I think both things will happen. And what will be the limits of human enhancement? If you want to think on the good side, like on the moral, spiritual side, there probably won't be any limits, right? People will compete to be better and better, and that will be a good thing. We'll end up with some very moral and spiritual people that way. Okay, other questions?
Hello.
Yes.
Hi, Dr. Solez. I have I just wanted to expand, or just if you could expand on what kind of role spirituality will play in the foreseeable future. Given that I know I have no backing for this, but in my opinion, I feel like our society has become less and less spiritual by the day. We're kind of in a spiritual dark age in a sense, where religion and other forms of connection that you would have isn't as personal, maybe not as what it used to be, but definitely not to the capacity that
Well,
can
believe it or not,
support, in my opinion.
we've
So I
had,
guess what kind of role would
yeah, we've had
sorry, go ahead.
lectures on that in the course. So like what proportion of people say they are not religious but spiritual? That has been fairly high in the past. You can ask whether people's actions really reflected what they say about being spiritual, or whether their actions suggested no spiritual component. But yeah, I think that being optimistic, which this course is also about, would be very good for people in general. You don't really meet a lot of optimism. You're probably aware of that article in The Economist that talks about the future being canceled. And actually, so I'll just show you, sorry, that's not. Yeah, so you probably know the movie, The Fifth Element. And so this graphic that you can see over on the wall there says no future. I mean, that's really the opposite of what we're talking about. We're sure that the future hasn't been canceled and that we can make it better. So that's kind of what we're up to in this course. And even those of you who don't feel you have any agency at all, just feel you're sort of buffeted by external forces that cannot take charge of your own life, maybe by the end of the course, you would think differently about that, that you can take charge of your own course, your own life, your own destiny. Yeah. So, any other thoughts?
I just had another question about Moore's Law and healthcare. So you were saying that the reason it doesn't really apply to healthcare is because we have sort of...
I didn't say that it doesn't apply. I said that it was muted. That means it's still there, but no, it fully applies. It's just a bit slowed down. The exponential curve it doesn't have exactly the same, trajectory as the regular Moore's Law curve. It is certainly there. It's just muted. That's all.
Do you have any ideas for ways that we can make it less muted? Like ways of introducing incentives into our healthcare system to encourage technological innovation and sort of combating that bureaucratic system?
Yeah, well, so part of it is the idea of, traditions and protecting the patient's privacy and so on. I think thoughts about that are changing. You probably know that in Alberta, that this coming June, I think that you'll have access to most the actual report of medical tests done on you in our healthcare system. You'll have the full text of that, and there are a few exceptions, but yeah. So there are lots of sort of changes where the patient is becoming more empowered, and I think that's very good. So less paternalistic views of the doctor knows best. Patient shouldn't ask any questions, kind of thing. I mean, that's very old-fashioned thinking now. So yeah, I think those things are gradually changing, and certainly in communications, I was one of those super users for the introduction of the EPIC system into the healthcare system. And previously, if you think of how you communicate in your personal life, how often do you leave voicemail messages or use pagers? Probably zero, And so that's the way medicine was up until November 2019 here, that we were all using pagers and relying on voicemail and all sorts of antiquated technology. And now we have secure messaging. And I mean, it's really cool. The quality of messages that healthcare professionals can send each other is actually better than in regular life rather than worse. And that's a really new thing just since November 4th, 2019. So that's quite an exciting change. Yeah, other questions?
On the topic of Moore's law and medicine being slower at integrating new technologies, given that even just the bureaucratic structure of how our universities work, currently I'm doing a double major in bio and comp sci, and that was the only way I could really fit in the courses and the knowledge that I wanted for my specific application. I want to focus on using all this new technology that's coming out to applications in the medical field, but currently there isn't many avenues, I guess, for a student to see that happen. Like there's no course or program that revolves around it, given that it is new. You don't really invest too hard, I guess, from the university's perspective into something that hasn't been established in industry. But currently, do you know of any, like, I guess, aspiring or like expanding fields for younger people to go into?
Well, you may not like what I have to say, but it's a simple answer. I think a lot of career planning that young people are doing looks to find somebody who has already done the thing that you want to do, and then you just follow the same path as that person and hope you can do as well as they did it, and so on. You have no idea how much harder that route is than carving out your own unique path, doing something nobody's done before. There's no way to measure you against anybody else, right? There's no competition, zero. So leading a life without precedent, doing stuff nobody's done before, you may think, oh, it's incredibly scary and I could never do that. But in many ways, it's easier than the usual path of saying, I want to be like so-and-so. I want at the same job, I want to take the same courses, So there are many limits in a life with precedent. There are no limits in a life without precedent. And that's sort of what I've done. If you research me, you find that like every time I did something that turned out to have impact was in the setting where other people said, oh, that's way too complicated. Well, just think about those words. Oh, that's way too complicated. It suggests that you have to completely understand something before you start it. But people who begin new stuff, they never completely understand what they're doing, right? Sort of flying by the seat of their pants and starting it, and you sort of learn on the job, right? And you ultimately figure out, oh, I guess that's what I'm doing, But nobody's going to criticize you for that because you're doing something no one else is doing, right? And it really is possible to do that, particularly in medicine. But I can talk about, I have a lot of young people associated with me interested in medicine who are not in medical school, but also who are in medical school and, recently now in practice and so on. You can see the full spectrum, but there is one danger of the conservatism that exists in young people today that was never there when I was growing up. Like, we were testing the limits, right? And like the words, if we do that, we might get in trouble. No young person ever said that back in the 60s or 70s. It's like, your social life would be dead if you said that. Whereas most young people today are kind of thinking about life that way. If I do that, I might get in trouble, And that really limits you. But yeah, so there are very, very few limits to sort of the straight line trajectory toward accomplishing important goals. And if the program's not there to do it, then you can suggest that, that there be created a new program or something. You don't have to follow an existing precedent where somebody else has already done what you're trying to do. Yeah. And in fact, most famous people that like take Elon Musk, right? I mean, he was heavily bullied when he was growing up. The tough kids waited for him after school and regularly beat him up and stuff. And then eventually life got better, right? And now he's the richest man in the world as of last week. So yeah, I don't know, whoever you would pick as sort of somebody that you really look up to, they probably followed a path that did not have a precedent of somebody else following the same path. And you can say, oh, well, that takes courage. I don't know. I think living life today, period, takes courage, right? Going outside your house, I mean, there are all sorts of things that were never scary before that are scary now, right? So how much scarier could it be to decide what you want to do in life and just figure out how to make that happen, rather than trying to find a detailed text description of that program already existing and other people already having done it and that sort of thing. Yeah. So.
Yeah, I totally agree with you, and I knew that going into this double major from the get-go, that not many people are going to believe in me. A lot of a lot of my friends from high school just straight up said I was dumb and that this will lead to absolutely nowhere. But I mean, I guess a little background: I wanted to go into medicine for like all of my life, and every single year I've been grooming myself in different ways, like not just preparing for the MCAT and stuff, but also talking to doctors, interviewing them, finding out what that career is actually like. And
Yeah.
the more I fell in love with technology, the more I was using it, the harder it is for me to see like a direct path like medical school to be something I want to pursue, just because I won't have the room to apply different projects, to apply different machine learning stuff and learn on the side. I guess won't have as much time. Talking to, I guess, my medical student friends now, they're like, it's probably better that you don't do this. You have way more time to do other things. And for the last 2 years, I've been doing this little competitions and applying it just either within work or in my own projects. That's been kind of what I've been relegated to, since there isn't a program
Yep. Yep. But you know, the other side of it
for me.
is,
There isn't a program
yeah,
that's structured
yeah,
that way, computer like computational techniques in medicine specifically. But
yeah.
it's just how it is for now. I was just wondering, like, if there's any other sources that you can get, I guess, more people who are interested in the same thing, or you see like a growing interest in this field or in this intersection of sciences that I guess we don't have currently at the U of A.
Excuse
as a
me,
specialist.
could I chime in here for 2 seconds?
Yeah,
I
for
have some
sure.
knowledge in this field.
Okay.
So I was in a similar boat to you, and I was researching, like you were saying, that there are no programs exist, but a lot do actually. If you just search up biomedical engineering, like almost every university has like master's programs or PhD programs,
Mm-hmm.
and I think those like really fit your bill, because like those are doing what you say, like like using both biology and like machine learning or robotics or whatnot, and really just bringing those two fields together. So I'm just curious if you've looked into those programs.
I have, and a few of my medical student friends said instead of doing that, there are master's programs such as those that you can look up. I think there was one in Yale that had a public health focus as well, with integration of new technologies. I guess it's still relatively new. There aren't too many options as it is now, but I mean, it could just be the scenario of just where we are in the world today. I'm sure in the future, like as this takes more traction, that there'll be more educational resources for people
Yeah.
who want to go into it. Um, yeah.
But I really feel strongly about this simple idea. And it's a popular message when I give it to medical students, even if they may not seem to agree with it beforehand. Don't give up the things that make you interesting. That the idea that medical school is so challenging that you must give up everything else that gives you, endorphin flow in life and just concentrate on medicine. Otherwise, you'll never succeed, is just not the case. And in fact, later on, when people are choosing a medical leader, the fact that somebody has interests outside of medicine and is still interesting to talk to after 10 p.m. at a party, it's not like when people stop talking about medicine, when you actually have lots of other things to talk about, that tends to be positive in terms of jobs you can have and so on. So I think that the idea that medicine is this confining, rigid box, that once you get in it, there are all these pleasures in life that are now shut off for you. All I could say is I have never found that. I don't know of any evidence for it. It's a part of the, imposter syndrome, which everybody feels. Human intelligence is different in every single human being, because we're not an inbred species like so. The brain works a little bit differently in every single head. So it's easy to get the idea that you are the stupidest person in the room, that they never should have let you into the program and so on. But it just isn't so, right? It's that in a certain instant, somebody else gets the answer quicker than you. But in other instances, maybe lots of them, you get the answer before they do, And so anyway, just if you take the attitude that you are going to be in charge of your own destiny, your own life, and you will not be overwhelmed. So like the first time that you're in somebody's lab and they tell you that you can't take a holiday this summer because, you know, the work of the lab is really important, don't you agree? And, you know, you don't really need a holiday anyway. You know that that is bogus, right? That actually it's legally encoded in this country that you're entitled to a holiday. And so things like that happen, right? That unfair suggestions are made and you can just push back gently if you wish and just say, well, you know, don't you know everybody else is taking a holiday? I think I'm going to do that too, right? And just a whole lot of other things like that. That this is not a concentration camp. It's not training for a trade like putting shoes on horses or something where you know there are certain rituals and they're never going to change and all this. No, you can make changes. Medicine is mainly about figuring situations out. You may actually turn out to be better at that than other people, have a new way to do it, you know? So anyway, in my own life, you know, I have not found anything to suggest that the approach of thinking that going into medicine closes off all sources of pleasure in your life leads you to a dismal end. I think it's exactly the opposite. So like, think about travel back in the time when you could actually do that, when there wasn't a virus out there. So I'm convinced that the travel I've taken to really beautiful, fascinating places, when I was being hosted as a speaker, was like 10 billion times better than any travel experience you could have paid for. You know, if you just wanted to go to the same place, you weren't giving a talk, but just say, I want a good travel experience, it would have been inferior because when you're a hosted speaker, the people really want you to have a good time and they know the best way in which the sites in their city and so on can be experienced. And so that's just one of many things. And then so that's travel. Travel related to your work when you're asked to speak somewhere is like 100 times better than just you paying to travel somewhere for fun. Secondly, your relationship with your kids, right? So medicine is one of the few endeavors in life where it has intrinsic rewards, where you end up doing stuff for other people that nobody has to tell you that was good. You know that was good. And it feels good inside. And it's a kind of infectious quality that your children, your grandchildren can tell that you're involved in something exciting that's sort of benefiting the rest of the human race and so on. And it's really cool that that can be so obvious. You don't even need to talk about it. And it's kind of a built-in incentive where the things you end up doing in medicine, that you do that if nobody was paying you, you know? It's like, of course I would do that, you know? And so to end up with that kind of job, it's a gift, man. It is the most fantastic feeling you can possibly imagine, to feel that you're responsible for improvements of health that in a large number of people and stuff like that. Whether it's one-on-one, like there's simple things, right? Like it may seem simple to you, but to the patient, it's like, so like if a patient can have so much wax in their ear that they can't hear out of one ear, it takes, I don't know, maybe 4 minutes to flush the wax out, and suddenly their hearing is restored. you can't imagine what a positive thing that is for somebody. And there are many other procedures like that. Sure, a lot of things in medicine are complicated, but there are also simple things where you look at the patient, you know exactly what they need, you can take care of it within 20 minutes, and they're really happy campers, and so that's something available to you in medicine on a regular basis.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. It's interesting because I feel like maybe the sentiment I got from a lot of the other people I went to school with who wanted to do medicine, they just had a very different approach than I did, or a different reason to be a doctor, for example. Like the one-on-one experience or the interest in just the whole process of death itself, even like just a lot of different reasons for going into medicine. That's very personable, and I guess I also do have that, but my main focus is just wider spread, like wider reach. It doesn't interest me as much if I can help one person or like a few, when I can help a lot of people, even if I don't get the direct satisfaction of seeing someone's life improve from my hands. Like, it's fine, I don't care, as long as I can help as many people as possible, being able to bring in these new innovations that will help mankind overall. I feel like my impact would be bigger. I guess my main hesitation with going into medicine was that that the focus for what they want to see in medical students were for them to be physicians and people who are on the front line, rather than like experimental out there kind of research or application.
There's room
It just seems
for
to me either
everything.
Sorry.
There is room for everything. I mean, I think look at various parts of my life where I've done extremely practical things and extremely, theoretical things and so on. There's room for it all. There's not just one knee-jerk reaction of what people want in medical students or doctors. So one of the things I always need to say in the first class is this is not a contest to see who is the most talkative. So looking at the other names here, are there other people who haven't said anything yet who would like to say something? Because I would encourage that.
Oh, sure. Just for the sake of it.
Yeah, hi.
Hey, there's like been a lot of work people have done in the past, like, I don't know, 2 to 5 years in just like general AI safety and whatever. I was just wondering, like, are we like ever going to like look at it, even just like periodically, like, hey, we have a problem X, and I don't know, some person a little while ago did this, and this is why it doesn't really solve our problem, or here's some here's some like limitations or whatever. Or are we just like talking like really, really, really big picture?
So you mean in general or in the course?
Yeah, just like
I think, yeah, in both settings, no, there are lots of specific approaches, and I don't feel that I'm not sort of dissatisfied with where AI safety is headed. I mean, one of the nice things is the heterogeneity, right, in sort of discussion that you're getting a lot of different vantage points of view. Yeah, I think it's proceeding in a fairly healthy way, and yeah, I think that's true in general, and also true in terms of the discussions about it in this course. So, yeah. So like we have the usual mix. We usually have people who are already in computing science, as some of the students, and students who are so far from computing science, they hardly even know what it is. And it's good to have that whole spectrum. Like this year we have professional philosophers, right? I think that's great, because as important as computing science is, philosophy is also equally important, right? So we have experts in both and the whole spectrum in between. And I have very great confidence that we'll do great things this term, and that you all will likely enjoy it a lot. So yeah, we can keep on talking. We are, 12 minutes after the formal end of the course, but for this session, anyone else who wants to make any comments?
I'll make a quick comment. I just updated the e-class page so that it better reflects like the outline of the semester, and also added a few fun resources you can check out. I think we'd like everybody to like introduce themselves at some point, whether you do that on the e-class form I just made, or if you use the Slack. I think, did you send out the Slack?
Yeah. So about half the people have already done that. Yeah, and then there's that. Not surprisingly, there's some really interesting bios there. Yeah, so it's great. But no, we would like that. The reason being that it's just not fair with this many people to take class time for people to introduce themselves. Having said that, though, I'm not restricting the other lecturers. Like, traditionally, Shauna Pandya has always gone around and asked all the students to explain why they're there and what their hopes and dreams are and stuff. And she may still do that. I'm not going to step in and stop her from doing it. But I think that it's good on even the first day, if you have an idea of what the spectrum of the students is and what their interests are and so on. And it just makes it more exciting for you to know that such diverse people are all interested in one course. You can think of, this is a joke, but you can think of the 40,000 people, 40,000 students at the university, how are you going to find the 33 cool ones? Well, this course is it's that filter, right? It identifies the 33 really cool people amongst the 40,000 students. So yeah, that's one other advantage. So any other questions, comments? Yeah, so just to sort of give you an idea of what happens next. So this will become a video. I'll put it up on YouTube as an unlisted video, which means it's not searchable. Nobody except us can find it. And it can't be seen by people who don't know what the URL is. And then later on, when I have consent from all of you, we'll change it to public so that people can see it. I think you can also see that in terms of your own privacy, it's not quite as bad as it at first seems. When you're sitting here and you're looking at your own image on the video and so on, geez, I'm really exposed. But on the video, you aren't, right? You're mainly seeing the big picture, like whoever's talking, you're seeing that person full screen. And when we're showing the slides, you're just seeing the slides. And so it's less revealing of you than the actual live experience. So I think that's also a good thing, less privacy concerns there. Okay, any other questions about what we're up to? Okay, so yeah, I mean, what Taryn made it sound like what she just did is like really simple, but she had an enormous task, because what I did is I copied all of the fall specs into the E-class. So, you know, everything said like September and so on. And so she has magically changed all that to the actual specs for this term. So that's wonderful. Yeah, thank you for doing that. Okay, any other questions? Okay, so I think that will be it for this. And Taryn will be presenting to us Thursday and next Tuesday, and then we get David Wood on the Thursday. Yeah. Okay, bye-bye, guys. Thank you very much for joining us.